Dear dreamer, where are you tonight? Curled beneath covers, resting by a dim lamp, or stretched beneath a window full of stars? And what time is it now? Nightfall, midnight, or the pale hour before day? Within this time, stories will become lanterns. Each one will shine for a while, lighting a path through the darkness, guiding you step by step toward rest. So take a breath, let the first lantern be lit, and follow where it leads. The White Snake. A long time ago, there lived a king who was famed for his wisdom through all the land. Nothing was hidden from him, and it seemed as if news of the most secret things were brought to him through the air. But he had a strange custom. Every day after dinner, when the table was cleared and no one else was present, the king, a trusty servant, had to bring him one more dish. It was covered, however, and even the servant did not know what was in it. Neither did anyone know, for the king never took off the cover to eat of it until he was quite alone. This had gone on for a long time, when one day the servant who took away the dish was overcome with such curiosity that he could not help carrying the dish into his room. When he had carefully locked the door, he lifted up the cover and saw a white snake lying on the dish. But when he saw it, he could not deny himself the pleasure of tasting it. So he cut off a little bit and put it into his mouth. No sooner had it touched his tongue than he heard a strange whispering of a voice outside his window. He went and listened, and then noticed that it was the sparrows who were chattering together and telling one another of all kinds of things which they had seen in the fields and woods. Eating the snake had given him power of understanding the language of animals. Now it so happened that on this very day, the queen lost her most beautiful ring, and suspicion of having stolen it fell upon this trusty servant, who was allowed to go everywhere. The king ordered the man to be brought before him, and threatened with angry words that unless he could, before the morrow, point out the thief, he himself should be looked upon as guilty and executed. In vain, he declared his innocence. He was dismissed with no better answer. In his trouble and fear, he went down into the courtyard and took thought how to help himself out of his trouble. Now some ducks were sitting together quietly by a brook and taking their rests. And whilst they were making their feathers smooth with their bills, they were having a confidential conversation together. The servants stood by and listened. They were telling one another of all the places where they had been waddling about all the morning, and what good food they had found. And one said in a pitiful tone, "Something lies heavy on my stomach. As I was eating in haste, I swallowed a ring which lay upon the queen's window. The servant at once seized her by the neck, carried her to the kitchen, and said to the cook, 'Here is a fine duck. pray kill her." "Yes," said the cook, and weighed her in his hand. "She has spared no trouble to fatten herself, and has been waiting to be roasted long enough." So he caught her head, and as she was being dressed for the spit, the queen's ring was found inside her. The servant could now easily prove his innocence, and the king, to make amends for the wrong, allowed him to ask a favor, and promised him the best place in the court that he could wish for. The servant refused everything, and only asked for a horse and some money for traveling, as he had a mind to see the world and go about a little. When his request was granted, he set out on his way, and one day came to a pond where he saw 3 fishes caught in the reeds and gasping for water. Now, though it is said that fishes are mute, he heard them lamenting that they must perish so miserably. And as he had a kind heart, he got off his horse and put the 3 prisoners back into the water. They leaped with delight, put out their heads, and cried to him, "We will remember you and repay you for saving us." He rode on, and after a while it seemed to him that he heard a voice in the sand at his feet. He listened and heard an ant king complain, "Why cannot folks, with their clumsy beasts, keep off our bodies? That stupid horse, with his heavy hoofs, has been treading down my people without mercy." So he turned on to a side path, and the ant king cried out to him, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." The path led him into a wood, and there he saw 2 ravens standing by their nest and throwing out their young ones. "Out with you, you idle good, for nothing creatures," cried they. "We cannot find food for you any longer. You are big enough and can provide for yourselves." But the poor young ravens lay upon the ground, flapping their wings and crying, "Oh, what helpless chicks we are. We must shift for ourselves, and yet we cannot fly. What can we do but lie here and starve?" So the good young fellow alighted and killed his horse with his sword, and gave it to them for food. Then they came hopping up to it, satisfied their hunger, and cried, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." And now he had to use his own legs. And when he had walked a long way, he came to a large city. There was a great noise and crowd in the streets, and a man rode up on horseback, crying aloud, "The king's daughter wants a husband, but whoever seeks her hand must perform a hard task. And if he does not succeed, he will forfeit his life." Many had already made the attempt, but in vain. Nevertheless, when the youth saw the king's daughter, he was so overcome by her great beauty that he forgot all danger, went before the king, and declared himself a suitor. So he was led out to the sea, and a gold ring was thrown into it before his eyes. Then the king ordered him to fetch this ring up from the bottom of the sea, and added, "If you come up again without it, you will be thrown in again and again until you perish amid the waves." All the people grieved for the handsome youth. Then they went away, leaving him alone by the sea. He stood on the shore and considered what he should do, when suddenly he saw 3 fishes come swimming towards him. And they were the very fishes whose lives he had saved. The one in the middle held a mussel in its mouth, which it laid on the shore at the youth's feet. And when he had taken it up and opened it, there lay gold ring in the shell. Full of joy, he took it to the king, and expected that he would grant him the promised reward. But when the proud princess perceived that he was not her equal in birth, she scorned him, and required him first to perform another task. She went down into the garden, and strewed with her own hands 10 sacks full of millet seed on the grass. Then she said, "Tomorrow morning, before sunrise, these must be picked up, and not a single grain be wanting." The youth sat down in the garden and considered how it might be possible to perform this task. But he could think of nothing. And there he sat, sorrowfully, awaiting the break of day, when he should be led to death. But as soon as the first rays of the sun shone into the garden, he saw all the 10 sacks standing side by side, quite full, and not a single grain was missing. The ant king had come in the night with thousands and thousands of ants, and the grateful creatures had by great industry picked up all the millet seed and gathered them into the sacks. Presently, the king's daughter herself came down into the garden, and was amazed to see that the young man had done the task she had given him. But she could not yet conquer her proud heart, and said, "Although he has performed both the tasks, he shall not be my husband until he has brought me an apple from the tree of life." The youth did not know where the tree of life stood, but he set out, and would have gone on forever, as long as his legs would carry him, though he had no hope of finding it. After he had wandered through 3 kingdoms, he came one evening to a wood, and lay down under a tree to sleep. But he heard a rustling in the branches, and a golden apple fell into his hand. At the same time, 3 ravens flew down to him, perched themselves upon his knee, and said, "We are the 3 young ravens whom you saved from starving. When we had grown big, and heard that you were seeking the golden apple, we flew over the sea to the end of the world, where the tree of life stands, and have brought you the apple." The youth, full of joy, set out homewards, and took the golden apple to to the king's beautiful daughter, who had now no more excuses left to make. They cut the apple of life in two and ate it together. And then her heart became full of love for him, and they lived in undisturbed happiness to a great age. End of the White Snake. The Wolf and the 7 Little Kids. There was once upon a time an old goat who had 7 little kids and loved them with all the love of a mother for her children. One day, she wanted to go into the forest and fetch some food. So she called all 7 to her and said, "Dear children, I have to go into the forest. Be on your guard against the wolf. If he comes in, he will devour you all, skin, hair, and everything. The wretch often disguises himself, but you will know him at once by his rough voice and his black feet." The kids said, "Dear mother, we will take good care of ourselves. You may go away without any anxiety." Then the old one bleated and went on her way with an easy mind. It was not long before someone knocked at the house door and called, "Open the door, dear children. Your mother is here and has brought something back with her for each of you." But the little kids knew that it was the wolf by the rough voice. "We will not open the door," cried they. "You are not our mother. She has a soft, pleasant voice, but your voice is rough. You are the wolf." Then the wolf went away to a shopkeeper and bought himself a great lump of chalk, ate this, and made his voice soft with it. Then he came back, knocked at the door of the house, and called, "Open the door, dear children. And your mother is here, and has brought something back with her for each of you." But the wolf had laid his black paws against the window, and the children saw them, and cried, "We will not open the door. Our mother has not black feet like you. You are the wolf." Then the wolf ran to a baker and said, "I have hurt my feet. Rub some dough over them for me." And when the baker had rubbed his feet over, he ran to the miller and said, "Strew some white meal over my feet for me." The miller thought to himself, "The wolf wants to deceive someone," and refused. But the wolf said, "If you will not do it, I will devour you." Then the miller was afraid and made his paws white for him. Truly, this is the way of mankind. So now the wretch went for the 3rd time to the house door, knocked at it, and said, "Open the door for me, children. Your dear little mother has come home and has brought every one of you something back from the forest with her." The little kids cried, "First, show us your paws, that we may know if you are our dear little mother." Then he put his paws in through the window, and when the kids saw that they were white, they believed that all he said was true, and opened the door. But who should come in but the wolf? They were terrified and wanted to hide themselves. One sprang under the table, the second into the bed, the third into the stove, the fourth into the kitchen, the fifth into the cupboard, the sixth under the washing bowl, and the seventh into the clock case. But the wolf found them all, and used no great ceremony. One after the other, he swallowed them down his throat. The youngest, who was in the clock case, was the only one he did not find. When the wolf had satisfied his appetite, he took himself off, laid himself down under a tree in the green meadow outside, and began to sleep. Soon afterwards, the old goat came home again from the forest. Ah, what a sight she saw there! The house door stood wide open. The table, chairs, and benches were thrown down. The washing bowl lay broken to pieces, and the quilts and pillows were pulled off the bed. She sought her children, but they were nowhere to be found. She called them one after another by name, but no one answered. At last, when she came to the youngest, a soft voice cried, "Dear mother, I am in the clock case." She took the kid out, and it told her that the wolf had come and eaten all the others. Then you may imagine how she wept over her poor children. At length, in her grief, she went out, and the youngest kid ran with her. When they came to the meadow, there lay the wolf by the tree, and snored so loud that the branches shook. She looked at him on every side, and saw that something was moving and struggling in his gorged throat. "Ah, heavens," she said, "is it possible that my poor children, whom he has swallowed down for his supper, can still be alive?" Then the kid had to run home and fetch scissors and a needle and thread, and the goat cut open the monster's stomach. And hardly had she made one cut than one little kid thrust its head out. And when she had got farther, all six sprang out, one after another, and were all still alive, and had suffered no injury whatever, for in his greediness the monster had swallowed them down whole. What rejoicing there was! They embraced their dear mother, and jumped like a tailor at his wedding. The mother, however, said, "Now go and look for some big stones, and we will fill the wicked beast's stomach with them while he is still asleep." Then the 7 kids dragged the stones thither with all speed, and put as many of them into his stomach as they could get in. And the mother sewed him up again in the greatest haste, so that he was not aware of anything, and never once stirred. When the wolf at length had had his fill of sleep, he got on his legs, and as the stones in his stomach made him very thirsty, he wanted to go to a well to drink. But when he began to walk and to move about, the stones in his stomach knocked against each other and rattled. Then cried he, "What rumbles and tumbles against my poor bones?" I thought were 6 kids, but it feels like big stones. And when he got to the well and stooped over the water to drink, the heavy stones made him fall in, and he drowned miserably. When the 7 kids saw that, they were running for the spot and cried aloud, "The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead!" and danced for joy round about the well with their mother. End of The Wolf and the 7 Little Kids. The Queen Bee. 2 kings' sons, once upon a time, went into the world to seek their fortunes, but they soon fell into a wasteful, foolish way of living, so that they could not return home again. Then their brother, who was a little insignificant dwarf, went out to seek for his brothers. But when he found them, they only laughed at him, to think that he, who was so young and simple, should try to travel through the world, when they, who were so much wiser, had been unable to get on. However, they all set out on their journey together, and came at last to an ant hill. The 2 elder brothers would have pulled it down in order to see how the poor ants, in their fright, would run about and carry off their eggs. But the little dwarf said, "Let the poor things enjoy themselves. I will not suffer you to trouble them." So on they went, and came to a lake where many, many ducks were swimming about. The 2 brothers wanted to catch 2 and roast them, but the dwarf said, "Let the poor things enjoy themselves. You shall not kill them." Next, they came to a bee's nest in a hollow tree, and there was so much honey that it ran down the trunk. And the 2 brothers wanted to light a fire under the tree and kill the bees, so as to get their honey. But the dwarf held them back and said, "Let the pretty insects enjoy themselves. I cannot let you burn them." At length, the 3 brothers came to a castle, and as they passed by the stables, they saw fine horses standing there, but all were of marble, and no man was to be seen. Then they went through the rooms till they came to a door on which were 3 locks, but in the middle of the door was a wicket, so that they could look into the next room. There they saw a little gray old man sitting at a table, and they called to him once or twice, but he did not hear. However, they called a 3rd time, and then he rose and came out to them. He said nothing, but took hold of them and led them to a beautiful table covered with all sorts of good things. And when they had eaten and drunk, he showed each of them to a bed chamber. The next morning, he came to the eldest and took him to a marble table where there were 3 tablets containing an account of the means by which the castle might be disenchanted. The first tablet said, "In the wood, under the moss, lie the 1,000 pearls belonging to the king's daughter. They must all be found. and if one be missing by set of sun, he who seeks them will be turned into marble. The eldest brother set out and sought for the pearls the whole day, but the evening came, and he had not found the first 100, so he was turned into stone, as the tablet had foretold. The next day the second brother undertook the task, but he succeeded no better than the first, for he could only find the second 100 of the pearls, and therefore he too was turned into stone. At last came the little dwarf's turn, and he looked in the moss, but it was so hard to find the pearls, and the job was so tiresome. So he sat down upon a stone and cried. And as he sat there, the king of the ants, whose life he had saved, came to help him, with 5,000 ants. And it was not long before they had found all the pearls and laid them in a heap. The second tablet said, "The key of the princess's bedchamber must be fished up first." The lake. And as the dwarf came to the brink of it, he saw the 2 ducks whose lives he had saved swimming about. And they dived down and soon brought in the key from the bottom. The third task was the hardest. It was to choose out the youngest and the best of the king's 3 daughters. Now they were all beautiful and all exactly alike, but he was told that the eldest had eaten a piece of sugar, the next some sweet syrup, and the youngest a spoonful of honey. So he was to guess which it was that had eaten the honey. Then came the queen of the bees, who had been saved by the little dwarf from the fire, and she tried the lips of all 3, but at last she sat upon the lips of the one that had eaten the honey, and so the dwarf knew which was the youngest. Thus the spell was broken, and all who had been turned into stones awoke and took their proper forms. And the dwarf married the youngest and best of the princesses, and was king after her father's death. But his brothers married the other 2 sisters. End of the Queen Bee, the Elves, and the Shoemaker. There once was a shoemaker who worked very hard and was very honest, but still he could not earn enough to live upon. And at last, all he had in the world was gone, save just leather enough to make 1 pair of shoes. Then he cut his leather out, all ready to make up the next day, meaning to rise early in the morning to his work. His conscience was clear, and his heart light amidst all his troubles. So he went peaceably to bed, left all his cares to heaven, and soon fell asleep. In the morning, after he had said his prayers, he set himself down to his work, when, to his great wonder, there stood the shoes already made upon the table. The good man knew not what to say or think at such an odd thing happening. He looked at the workmanship. There was not 1 false stitch in the whole job. All was so neat and true. that it was quite a masterpiece. The same day a customer came in, and the shoes suited him so well that he willingly paid a price higher than usual for them. And the poor shoemaker, with the money, bought leather enough to make 2 pairs more. In the evening, he cut out the work and went to bed early, that he might get up and begin betimes next day. But he was saved all the trouble, for when he got up in the morning, the work was done, ready to his hand. Soon in came buyers, who paid him handsomely for his goods, so that he bought leather enough for 4 pair more. He cut out the work again overnight, and found it done in the morning as before, and so it went on for some time. What was got ready in the evening was always done by daybreak, and the good man soon became thriving and well off again. One evening, about Christmas time, as he and his wife were sitting over the fire chatting together, he said to her, "I should like to sit up and watch tonight, that we may see who it is that comes and does my work for me." The wife liked the thought, so they left the light burning and hid themselves in a corner of the room, behind a curtain that was hung up there, and watched what would happen. As soon as it was midnight, there came in 2 little naked dwarfs, and they sat themselves upon the shoemaker's bench, took on all the work that was cut out, and began to ply with their little fingers, stitching and rapping and tapping away at such a rate that the shoemaker was all wonder, and could not take his eyes off them. And on they went, till the job was quite done, and the shoes stood ready for use upon the table. This was long before daybreak, and then they bustled away as quick as lightning. The next day, the wife said to the shoemaker, "Those little wights have made us rich, and we ought to be thankful to them, and do them a good turn if we can. I am quite sorry to see them run about as they do, and indeed it is not very decent, for they have nothing upon their backs to keep off the cold. I'll tell you what, I will make each of them a shirt and a coat and a waistcoat and a pair of pantaloons into the bargain, and do you make each of them a little pair of shoes." The thought pleased the old cobbler very much, and one evening, when all the things were ready, they laid them on the table instead of the work that they used to cut out, and then went out and hid themselves to watch what the little elves would do. About midnight in they came, dancing and skipping, hopping round the room, and then went to sit down to their work as usual. But when they saw the clothes lying for them, they laughed and chuckled, and seemed mightily delighted. Then they dressed themselves in the twinkling of an eye, and danced and capered, and sprang about as merry as could be, till at last they danced out the door and away over the green. The good couple saw them no more, but everything went well with them from that time forward, as long as they live. End of the Elves and the Shoemaker. The Juniper-Tree. Long, long ago, some 2,000 years or so, there lived a rich man with a good and beautiful wife. They loved each other dearly, but sorrowed much that they had no children. So greatly did they desire to have one, that the wife prayed for it day and night. But still they remained childless. In front of the house there was a court in which grew a juniper tree. One winter's day, the wife stood under the tree to peel some apples, and as she was peeling them, she cut her finger, and the blood fell on the snow. "Ah," sighed the woman heavily, "if I had but a child as red as blood and as white as snow." And as she spoke the words, her heart grew light within her, and it seemed to her that her wish was granted. And she returned to the house, feeling glad and comforted. A month passed, and the snow had all disappeared. Then another month went by, and all the earth was green. So the months followed one another, and first the trees budded in the woods, and soon the green branches grew thickly intertwined. And then the blossoms began to fall. Once again, the wife stood under the juniper-tree, and it was so full of sweet scent that her heart leaped for joy, and she was so overcome with her happiness that she fell on her knees. Presently, the fruit became round and firm, and she was glad and at peace. And when they were fully ripe, she picked the berries and ate eagerly of them. And then she grew sad and ill. A little while later, she could not her husband, and said to him, weeping, "If I die, bury me under the juniper-tree." Then she felt comforted and happy again. And before another month had passed, she had a little child. And when she saw that it was as white as snow and as red as blood, her joy was so great that she died. Her husband buried her under the juniper-tree and wept bitterly for her. By degrees, however, his sorrow grew less, and although at times he still grieved over his loss, he was able to go about as usual. And later on, he married again. He now had a little daughter born to him. The child of his first wife was a boy who was as red as blood and as white as snow. The mother loved her daughter very much, and when she looked at her and then looked at the boy, it pierced her heart to think that he would always stand in the way of her own child. And she was continually thinking how she could get the whole of the property for her. This evil thought took possession of her more and more, and made her behave very unkindly to the boy. She drove him from place to place with cuffings and buffetings, so that the poor child went about in fear and had no peace from the time he left school to the time he went back. One day the little daughter came running to her mother in the storeroom and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yes, my child," said the wife, and she gave her a beautiful apple out of the chest. The chest had a very heavy lid and a large iron lock. "Mother," said the little girl again, "may not brother have one too?" The mother was angry at this, but she answered, "Yes, when he comes out." Just then, she looked out of the window and saw him coming, and it seemed as if an evil spirit entered into her, for she snatched the apple out of her little daughter's hand and said, "You shall not have one before your brother." She threw the apple into the chest and shut it too. The little boy now came in, and the evil spirit in the wife made her say kindly to him, "My son, will you have an apple?" But she gave him a wicked look. "Mother," said the boy, "how dreadful you look." "Yes, give me an apple." The thought came to her that she should kill him. "Come with me," she said, and she lifted up the lid of the chest. "Take one out for yourself." And as he bent over to do so, the evil spirit urged her, and crash! Down went the lid, and off went the little boy's head. Then she was overwhelmed with fear at the thought of what she had done. "If only I can prevent anyone knowing that I did it," she thought. So she went upstairs to her room and took a white handkerchief out of her top drawer. Then she set the boy's head again on his shoulders and bound it with the handkerchief so that nothing could be seen, and placed him on a chair by the door with an apple in his hand. Soon after, this little Marlene came up to her mother, who was stirring a pot of boiling water over the fire, and said, "Mother, brother is sitting by the door with an apple in his hand, and he looks so pale. And when I asked him to give me the apple, he did not answer, and that frightened me." "Go to him again," said her mother, "and if he does not answer, give him a box on the ear." So little Marlene went and said, "Brother, give me that apple." But he did not say a word. Then she gave him a box on the ear, and his head rolled off. She was so terrified at this that she ran crying and screaming to her mother. "Oh," she said, "I have knocked off brother's head." And then she wept and wept, and nothing would stop her. "What have you done?" said her mother. "But no one must know about it, so you must keep silence. What is done can't be undone. We will make him into puddings." And she took the little boy and cut him up, made him into puddings, and put him in the pot. But Marlene stood looking on and wept and wept, and her tears fell into the pot so that there really was no need of salt. Presently, the father came home and sat down to his dinner. He asked, "Where is my son?" Mother said nothing, but gave him a large dish of black pudding, and Marlene still wept without ceasing. The father again asked, "Where is my son?" "Oh," answered the wife, "he is gone into the country to his mother's great uncle. He is going to stay there some time." "What has he gone there for?" "And he never even said goodbye to me." "Well, he likes being there, and he told me he should be away quite 6 weeks. He is well looked after there. I feel very unhappy about it," said the husband, in case it should not be all right. "And he ought to have said goodbye to me." With this, he went on with his dinner and said, "Little Marlene, why do you weep? Brother will soon be back." Then he asked his wife for more pudding, and as he ate, he threw the bones under the table. Little Marlene went upstairs and took her best silk handkerchief out of her bottom drawer, and in it she wrapped all the bones from under the table and carried them outside. And all the time she did nothing but weep. Then she laid them in the green grass under the juniper-tree, and she had no sooner done so than all her sadness seemed to leave her, and she wept no more. And now the juniper-tree began to move, and the branches waved backwards and forwards, first away from one another, and then together again, as it might by someone clasping their hands for joy. After this, a mist came round the tree, and in the midst of it there was a burning as of fire. And out of the fire there flew a beautiful bird that rose high into the air, singing magnificently. And when it could no more be seen, the juniper-tree stood there as before, and the silk handkerchief and the bones were gone. Little Marlene now felt as light-hearted and happy as if her brother were still alive, and she went back to the house and sat down cheerfully to the table and ate. The bird flew away and alighted on the house of a goldsmith and began to sing, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid my kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper-tree. Kee-weet, kee-weet. What a beautiful bird am I." The goldsmith was in his workshop making a gold chain when he heard the song of the bird on his roof. He thought it so beautiful that he got up and ran out. And as he crossed the threshold, he lost one of his slippers, but he ran on into the middle of the street with a slipper on one foot and a sock on the other. He still had on his apron, and still held the gold chain and the pincers in his hands. And so he stood gazing up at the bird while the sun came shining brightly down on the street. "Bird," he said, "how beautifully you sing. Sing me that song again." "Nay," said the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. Give that gold chain, and I will sing it to you again." "Here is the chain, take it," said the goldsmith. "Only sing me that again." The bird flew down and took the gold chain in his right claw, and then he alighted again in front of the goldsmith and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree." Kiwit, kiwit. What a beautiful bird am I. Then he flew away and settled on the roof of a shoemaker's house and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath a juniper tree." Kiwit, kiwit. What a beautiful bird am I. The shoemaker heard him, and he jumped up and ran out in his shirt sleeves and stood looking up at the bird on the roof with his hand over his eyes to keep himself from being blinded by the sun. "Bird," he said, "how beautifully you sing." Then he called through the door to his wife, "Wife, come out. Here is a bird. Come and look at it, and hear how beautifully it sings." Then he called his daughter and the children, then the apprentices, girls and boys, and they all ran up the street to look at the bird, and saw how splendid it was, with its red and green feathers, and its neck like burnished gold, and eyes like two bright stars in its head. "Bird," said the shoemaker, "sing me that song again." "Nay," answered the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. You must give me something." "Wife," said the man, "go into the garret. On the upper shelf you will see a pair of red shoes. Bring them to me." The wife went in and fetched the shoes. "There, bird," said the shoemaker, "now sing me that song again." The bird flew down and took the red shoes in his left claw. And then he went back to the roof and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree." Kiwit, kiwit. What a beautiful bird am I. When he had finished, he flew away. He had the chain in his right claw and the shoes in his left. and he flew right away to a mill, and the mill went click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. Inside the mill were 20 of the miller's men, hewing a stone, and as they went, click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. The mill went click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. The jar settled on a lime tree in front of the mill and sang, "My mother killed her little son." Then one of the men left off. "My father grieved when I was gone." 2 more men left off and listened. "My sister loved me best of all." Then 4 more left off. "She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones, that they might lie." Now there were only 8 at work underneath, and now only 5, the juniper-tree, and now only 1. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then he looked up, and the last one had left off work. "Bird," he said, "what a beautiful song that is you sing. Let me hear it too. Sing it again." "Nay," answered the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. Give me that millstone, and I will sing it again." "If it belonged to me alone," said the man, "you should have it." "Yes, yes," said the others. "If you will sing again, he can have it." The bird came down, and all the 20 millers set to, and lifted up the stone with a beam. Then the bird put his head through the hole, and took the stone round his neck like a collar, and flew back with it to the tree, and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me, and took my bones, that they might lie underneath the juniper tree." Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. And when he had finished his song, he spread his wings, and with the chain in his right claw, the shoe in his left, and the millstone round his neck, he flew right away to his father's house. The father, the mother, and little Marlene were having their dinner. "How light-hearted I feel," said the father, "so pleased and cheerful." "And I," said the mother, "I feel so uneasy, as if a heavy thunderstorm were coming." But little Marlene sat and wept and wept. Then the Vera came flying towards the house and settled on the roof. "I do feel so happy," said the father, "and how beautifully the sun shines. I feel just as if I were going to see an old friend again." "Ah," said the wife, "and I am so full of distress and uneasiness that my teeth chatter, and I feel as if there were a fire in my veins." And she tore open her dress. And all the while, little Marlene sat in the corner and wept, and the plate on her knees was wet with her tears. The bird now flew to the juniper-tree and began singing, "My mother killed her little son." The mother shut her eyes and her ears, that she might see and hear nothing. But there was a roaring sound in her ears, like that of a violent storm, and in her eyes a burning and flashing like lightning. My father grieved when I was gone. "Look, mother," said the man, "at the beautiful bird that is singing so magnificently, and how warm and bright the sun is, and what a delicious scent of spice in the air. My sister loved me best of all." Then little Marlene laid her head down on her knees and sobbed. "I must go outside and see the bird nearer," said the man. "Oh, do not go," cried the wife. "I feel as if the whole house were in flames." But the man went out and looked at the bird. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper-tree. Kiwit, kiwit. What a beautiful bird am I. With that, the bird let fall the gold chain, and it fell just round the man's neck, so that it fitted him exactly. He went inside and said, "See, what a splendid bird that is. He has given me this beautiful gold chain, and looks so beautiful himself." But the wife was in such fear and trouble that she fell on the floor, and her cap fell from her head. Then the bird began again. "My mother killed her little son." "Ah, me," cried the wife, "if I were but 1,000 feet beneath the earth, that I might not hear that song. My father grieved when I was gone." Then the woman fell down again, as if dead. My sister loved me best of all. "Well," said little Marlene, "I will go out too, and see if the bird will give me anything." So she went out. She laid her kerchief over me, and took my bones, that they might lie. And he threw down the shoes to her, underneath the juniper-tree. Kiwit, kiwit! What a beautiful bird am I. And she now felt quite happy and light-hearted. She put on the shoes and danced and jumped about in them. "I was so miserable," she said, "when I came out. But that has all passed away. That is indeed a splendid bird. And he has given me a pair of red shoes." The wife sprang up, with her hair standing out from her head like flames of fire. "Then I will go out too," she said, "and see if it will lighten my misery, for I feel as if the world were coming to an end." But as she crossed the threshold, crash! The bird threw the millstone down on her head, and she was crushed to death. The father and little Marlene heard the sound and ran out. But they only saw mist and flame and fire rising from the spot. And when these had passed, there stood the little brother, and he took the father and little Marlene by the hand. Then they all three rejoiced and went inside together and sat down to their dinners and ate. End of the Juniper-Tree. The turnip. There were two brothers who were both soldiers. The one was rich and the other poor. The poor man thought that he would try to better himself, so, pulling off his red coat, he became a gardener and dug his ground well and sowed turnips. When the seed came, there was one plant bigger than all the rest, and it kept getting larger and larger, and seemed as if it would never cease growing, so that it might have been called the Prince of Turnips, for there never was such a one seen before, and never will again. At last, it was so big that it filled a cart, and 2 oxen could hardly draw it. And the gardener knew not what in the world to do with it, nor whether it would be a blessing or a curse to him. One day he said to himself, "What shall I do with it? If I sell it, it will bring no more than another, and for eating the little turnips are better than this. The best thing, perhaps, is to carry it and give it to the king as a mark of respect." Then he yoked his oxen and drew the turnip to his court and gave it to the king. "What a wonderful thing," said the king. "I have seen many strange things, but such a monster as this I never saw. Where did you get the seed? Or is it only your good luck? If so, you are a true child of fortune." "Ah, no," answered the gardener. "I am no child of fortune. I am a poor soldier who never could get enough to live upon. So I laid aside my red coat and set to work, tilling the ground. I have a brother who is rich, and your majesty knows him well, and all the world knows him. But because I am poor, everybody forgets me." The king then took pity on him and said, "You shall be poor no longer. I will give you so much that you shall be even richer than your brother." Then he gave him gold and lands and flocks, and made him so rich that his brother's fortune could not at all be compared with his. When the brother heard of all this, and how a turnip had made the gardener so rich, he envied him sorely, and bethought himself how he could contrive to get the same good fortune for himself. However, he determined to manage more cleverly than his brother, and got together a rich present of gold and fine horses for the king, and thought he must have a much larger gift in return, for if his brother had received so much for only a turnip, what must his present be worth? The king took the gift very graciously, and said he knew not what to give in return more valuable and wonderful than the great turnip. So the soldier was forced to put it into a cart and drag it home with him. When he reached home, he knew not upon whom to vent his rage and spite, and at length wicked thoughts came into his head, and he resolved to kill his brother. So he hired some villains to murder him, and having shown them where to lie in ambush, he went to his brother and said, "Dear brother, I have found a hidden treasure. Let us go and dig it up and share it between us." The other had no suspicions of his roguery, so they went out together. And as they were traveling along, the murderers rushed out upon him, bound him, and were going to hang him on a tree. But whilst they were getting all ready, they heard the trampling of a horse at a distance, which so frightened them that they pushed their prisoner, neck and shoulders together, into a sack, and swung him by a cord to the tree, where they left him dangling and ran away. Meantime, he worked and worked away till he made a hole large enough to put out his head. When the horseman came up, he proved to be a student, a merry fellow who was journeying along on his nag and singing as he went. As soon as the man in the sack saw him passing under the tree, he cried out, "Good morning, good morning to thee, my friend." The student looked about everywhere, and seeing no one, and not knowing where the voice came from, cried out, "Who calls me?" Then the man in the tree answered, "Lift up thine eyes, for behold, here I sit in the sack of wisdom. Here have I, in a short time, learned great and wondrous things compared to this seat. All the learning of the schools is as empty air. A little longer, and I shall know all that man can know, and shall come forth wiser than the wisest of mankind. Here I discern the signs and motions of the heavens and the stars, the laws that control the winds, the number of the sands on the seashore, the healing of the sick, the virtues of all simples, of birds and of precious stones. Wert thou but once here, my friend, thou wouldst feel and own the power of knowledge." The student listened to all this and wondered much. At last he said, "Present be the day and hour when I found you. Cannot you contrive to let me into the sack for a little while?" Then the other answered, as if very unwillingly, "A little space I may allow thee to sit here, if thou wilt reward me well and entreat me kindly. But thou must tarry yet an hour below, till I have learnt some little matters that are yet unknown to me." So the student sat himself down and waited a while, but the time hung heavy upon him, and he begged earnestly that he might ascend forthwith, for his thirst for knowledge was great. Then the other pretended to give way, and said, "Thou must let the sack of wisdom descend by untying yonder cord, and then thou shalt enter." So the student let him down, opened the sack, and set him free. "Now then," cried he, "let me ascend quickly." As he began to put himself into the sack, heels first. "Wait a while," said the gardener. "That is not the way." Then he pushed him in head first, tied up the sack, and soon swung up the searcher after wisdom dangling from him. Air. "How is it with thee, friend?" said he. "Dost thou not feel that wisdom comes unto thee? Rest there in peace till thou art a wiser man than thou wert." So saying, he trotted off on the student's nag, and left the poor fellow to gather wisdom till somebody should come and let him down. End of the turnip. Clever Hans. "Whither away, Hans?" Hans answered, "To Gretel. Behave well, Hans." "Oh, I'll behave well. Good. Bye, mother. Goodbye, Hans." Hans comes to Gretel. "Good day, Gretel." "Good day, Hans. What do you bring that is good?" "I bring nothing. I want to have something given me." Gretel presents Hans with a needle. Hans says, "Good bye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans." Hans takes the needle, sticks it into a hay cart, and follows the cart home. "Good evening, mother." "Good evening, Hans. Where have you been?" "With Gretel." "What did you take her?" "I took nothing. Had something given me." "What did Gretel give you?" "Gave me a needle." "Where is the needle, Hans?" "Stuck in the hay cart." "That was ill done, Hans. You should have stuck the needle in your sleeve." "Never mind. I'll do better next time." "Whither away, Hans?" "To Gretel, mother." "Behave well, Hans." "I'll behave well." "Good bye, mother." "Goodbye, Hans." Hans comes to Gretel. "Good day, Gretel. What do you bring that is good?" "I bring nothing. I want to have something given to me." Gretel presents Hans with a knife. "Good bye, Gretel." "Goodbye, Hans." Hans takes the knife, sticks it in his sleeve, and goes home. "Good evening, mother." "Good evening, Hans. Where have you been?" "With Gretel." "With Gretel. What did you take her?" "I took her nothing. She gave me something." "What did Gretel give you?" "Gave me a knife." "Where is the knife, Hans?" "Stuck in my sleeve." "That's ill done, Hans. You should have put the knife in your pocket." "Never mind. We'll do better next time." "Whither away, Hans?" "To Gretel, mother." "Behave well, Hans." "Oh, I'll behave well." "Good bye, mother." "Goodbye, Hans." Hans comes to Gretel. "Good day, Gretel." "Good day, Hans. What good thing do you bring?" I bring nothing. I want something given me. Gretel presents Hans with a young goat. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the goat, ties its legs, and puts it in his pocket. When he gets home, it is suffocated. Good evening, Mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? With Gretel. What did you take her? I took nothing. She gave me something. What did Gretel give you? She gave me a goat. Where is the goat, Hans? I put it in my pocket. That was ill done, Hans. You should have put a rope around the goat's neck. Never mind. We'll do better next time. To Gretel, Mother. Behave well, Hans. Oh, I'll behave well. Good. Bye, Mother. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good day, Gretel. Good day, Hans. What good thing do you bring? I bring nothing. I want something given me. Gretel presents Hans with a piece of bacon. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the bacon, ties it to a rope, and drags it away behind him. The dogs come and devour the bacon. When he gets home, he has a rope in his hand, and there is no longer anything hanging on to it. Good evening, Mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? With Gretel. What did you take her? I took her nothing. She gave me something. What did Gretel give you? Gave me a bit of bacon. Where is the bacon, Hans? I tied it to a rope, brought it home. Dogs took it. That was ill done, Hans. You should have carried the bacon on your head. Never mind. We'll do better next time. Whither away, Hans? To Gretel, Mother. Behave well, Hans. I'll behave well. Goodbye, Mother. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good day, Gretel. Good day, Hans. What good thing do you bring? I bring nothing, but would have something given. Gretel presents Hans with a calf. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the calf, puts it on his head, and the calf kicks his face. Good evening, Mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? With Gretel. What did you take her? But had something given me. What did Gretel give you? A calf. Where have you the calf, Hans? I set it on my head, and it kicked my face. That was ill done, Hans. You should have led the calf and put it in the stall. Never mind. We'll do better next time. Whither away, Hans? To Gretel, Mother. Behave well, Hans. I'll behave well. Goodbye, Mother. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good day, Gretel. Good day, Hans. What good thing do you bring? I bring nothing, but would have something given. Gretel says to Hans, I will go with you. Hans takes Gretel, ties her to a rope, leads her to the rack, and binds her fast. Then Hans goes to his mother. "Good evening, mother." "Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? With Gretel? What did you take her? I took her nothing. What did Gretel give you?" "She gave me nothing. She came with me." "Where have you left Gretel?" "I led her by the rope, tied her to the rack, and scattered some grass for her. That was ill done. Hans, you should have cast friendly eyes on her." "Never mind. We'll do better." Hans went into the stable, cut out all the calves' and sheep's eyes, and threw them in Gretel's face. Then Gretel became angry, tore herself loose, and ran away, and was no longer the bride of Hans. The three languages. An aged count once lived in Switzerland, who had an only son, but he was stupid and could learn nothing. Then said the father, "Hark you, my son, try as I will. I can get nothing into your head. You must go from hence. I will give you into the care of a celebrated master, who shall see what he can do with you." The youth was sent into a strange town and remained a whole year with the master. At the end of this time, he came home again, and his father asked, "Now, my son, what have you learned?" "Father, I have learned what the dogs say when they bark." "Lord, have mercy on us," cried the father. "Is that all you have learned? I will send you into another town to another master." The youth was taken thither, and stayed a year with this master likewise. When he came back, the father again asked, "My son, what have you learned?" He answered, "Father, I have learned what the birds say." Then the father fell into a rage and said, "Oh, you lost man, you have spent the precious time and learnt nothing. Are you not ashamed to appear before my eyes? I will send you to a third master, but if you learn nothing this time also, I will no longer be your father." The youth remained a whole year with the third master also, and when he came home again, and his father inquired, "My son, what have you learned?" He answered, "Dear father, I have this year learned what the frogs croak." Then the father fell into the most furious anger, sprang up, called his people thither, and said, "This man is no longer my son. I drive him forth, and command you to take him out into the forest and kill him." They took him forth, but when they should have killed him, they could not do it for pity, and let him go. And they cut the eyes and tongue out of a deer, that they might carry them to the old man as a token. The youth wandered on, and after some time came to a fortress, where he begged for a night's lodging. Said the lord of the castle, "If you will pass the night down there in the old tower, go thither. But I warn you, it is at the peril of your life, for it is full of wild dogs, which bark and howl without stopping. And at certain hours, a man has to be given to them, whom they at once devour. The whole district was in sorrow and dismay because of them, and yet no one could do anything to stop this. The youth, however, was without fear, and said, "Just let me go down to the barking dogs, and give me something that I can throw to them. They will do nothing to harm me." As he himself would have it so, they gave him some food for the wild animals, and led him down to the tower. When he went inside, the dogs did not bark at him, but wagged their tails quite amicably around him, ate what he set before them, and did not hurt one hair of his head. Next morning, to the astonishment of everyone, he came out again, safe and unharmed, and said to the lord of the castle, "The dogs have revealed to me, in their own language, why they dwell there and bring evil on the land. They are bewitched, and are obliged to watch over a great treasure which is below in the tower, and they can have no rest until it is taken away. And I have likewise learnt from their discourse how that is to be done." Then all who had heard this rejoiced, and the lord of the castle said he would adopt him as a son if he accomplished it successfully. He went down again, and as he knew what he had to do, he did it thoroughly, and brought a chest full of gold out with him. The howling of the wild dogs was henceforth heard no more. They had disappeared, and the country was freed from the trouble. After some time, he took it in his head that he would travel to Rome. On the way, he passed by a marsh in which a number of frogs were sitting croaking. He listened to them, and when he became aware of what they were saying, he grew very thoughtful and sad. At last he arrived in Rome, where the Pope had just died, and there was great doubt among the cardinals as to whom they should appoint as his successor. They at length agreed that the person should be chosen as Pope, who should be distinguished by some divine and miraculous token. And just as that was decided on, the young count entered into the church, and suddenly 2 snow-white doves flew on his shoulders and remained sitting there. The ecclesiastics recognized therein the token from above, and asked him on the spot if he would be Pope. He was undecided, and knew not if he were worthy of this, but the doves counseled him to do it, and at length he said yes. Then was he anointed and consecrated, and thus was fulfilled what he had heard from the frogs on his way, which had so affected him that he was to be His Holiness, the Pope. Then he had to sing a mass, and did not know one word of it. But the 2 doves sat continually on his shoulders, and said it all in his ear. End of the 3 languages. The fox and the cat. It happened that the cat met the fox in a forest, and as she thought to herself, "He is clever and full of experience, and much esteemed in the world," she spoke to him in a friendly way. "Good day, dear Mr. Fox. How are you? How is all with you? How are you getting on in these hard times?" The fox, full of all kinds of arrogance, looked at the cat from head to foot, and for a long time did not know whether he would give an answer or not. At last he said, "Oh, you wretched beard, cleaner, you pie, bald fool, you hungry mouse hunter, what can you be thinking of? Have you the cheek to ask how I am getting on? What have you learnt? How many arts do you understand?" "I understand but one," replied the cat modestly. "What art is that?" asked the fox. "When the hounds are following me, I can spring into a tree and save myself." "Is that all?" said the fox. "I am master of 100 arts, and have into the bargain a sack full of cunning. You make me sorry for you. Come with me. I will teach you how people get away from the hounds." Just then came a hunter with 4 dogs. The cat sprang nimbly up a tree and sat down at the top of it, where the branches and foliage quite concealed her. "Open your sack, Mr. Fox. Open your sack," cried the cat to him. But the dogs had already seized him and were holding him fast. "Ah, Mr. Fox," cried the cat, "you with your 100 arts are left in the lurch. Had you been able to climb like me, you would not have lost your life." End of The Fox and the Cat. The 4 Clever Brothers. "Dear children," said a poor man to his 4 sons, "I have nothing to give you. You must go out into the wide world and try your luck. Begin by learning some craft or another, and see how you can get on." So the 4 brothers took their walking sticks in their hands and their little bundles on their shoulders, and after bidding their father goodbye, went all out at the gate together. When they had got on some way, they came to 4 crossways, each leading to a different country. Then the eldest said, "Here we must part, but this day, 4 years, we will come back to this spot. And in the meantime, each must try to do what he can for himself." So each brother went his way, and as the eldest was hastening on, a man met him and asked him where he was going and what he wondered. "I am going to try my luck in the world, and should like to begin by learning some art or trade," answered he. "Then," said the man, "go with me, and I will teach you to become the cunningest thief that ever was." "No," said the other, "that is not an honest calling. And what can one look to earn by it in the end But the gallows? Oh, said the man, you need not fear the gallows, for I will only teach you to steal what will be fair game, with nothing but what no one else can get or care anything about, and where no one can find you out. So the young man agreed to follow his trade, and he soon showed himself so clever that nothing could escape him that he had once set his mind upon. The second brother also met a man who, when he found out what he was setting out upon, asked him what craft he meant to follow. I do not know yet, said he. Then come with me and be a star gazer. It is a noble art, for nothing can be hidden from you when once you understand the star. The plan pleased him much, and he soon became such a skillful star gazer that when he had served out his time and wanted to leave his master, he gave him a glass and said, "With this you can see all that is passing in the sky and on earth, and nothing can be hidden from you." The third brother met a huntsman who took him with him and taught him so well all that belonged to hunting that he became very clever in the craft of the woods. And when he left his master, he gave him a bow and said, "Whatever you shoot at with this bow, you will be sure to hit." The youngest brother likewise met a man who asked him what he wished to do. "Would you not like," said he, "to be a tailor?" "Oh no," said the young man, sitting cross-legged from morning to night, working backwards and forwards with a needle and goose, will never suit me." "Oh," answered the man, "that is not any sort of tailoring. Come with me, and you will learn quite another kind of craft from that." Not knowing what better to do, he came into the plan and learnt tailoring from the beginning. And when left his master, he gave him a needle and said, "You can sew anything with this, be it as soft as an egg or as hard as steel, and the joint will be so fine that no seam will be seen." After the space of 4 years, at the time agreed upon, the 4 brothers met at the 4 crossroads, and having welcomed each other, set off towards their father's home, where they told him all that had happened to them, and how each had learned some craft. Then, one day, as they were sitting before the house under a very high tree, the father said, "I should like to try what each of you can do in this way." So he looked up and said to the second son, "At the top of this tree there is a chaffinch's nest. Tell me how many eggs there are in it." The stargazer took his glass, looked up, and said, "5. "Now," said the father to the eldest son, "take away the eggs without letting the bird that is sitting upon them and hatching them know anything of what you are doing." So the cunning thief climbed up the tree and brought away to his father the 5 eggs from under the bird, and had never saw or felt what he was doing, but kept sitting on at its ease. Then the father took the eggs and put one on each corner of the table and the 5th in the middle, and said to the huntsman, "Cut all the eggs in 2 pieces at one shot." The huntsman took up his bow, and at one shot struck all the 5 eggs as his father wished. "Now comes your turn," said he to the young tailor. "Sew the eggs and the young birds in them together again, so neatly that the shot shall have done them no harm." Then the tailor took his needle and sewed the eggs as he was told, and when he had done, the thief was sent to take them back to the nest and put them under the bird without its knowing it. Then she went on sitting and hatched them, and in a few days they crawled out and had only a little red streak across their necks, where the tailor had sewn them together. "Well done, sons," said the old man. "You have made good use of your time and learnt something worth the knowing. But I am sure I do not know which ought to have the prize. Oh, that a time might soon come for you to turn your skill to some account." Not long after this, there was a great bustle in the country, for the king's daughter had been carried off by a mighty dragon, and the king mourned over her loss day and night, and made it known that whoever brought her back to him should have her for a wife. Then the 4 brothers said to each other, "Here is a chance for us. Let us try what we can do." And they agreed to see whether they could not set the princess free. "I will soon find out where she is, however," said the stargazer, as he looked through his glass, and soon cried out, "I see her afar off, sitting upon a rock in the sea, and I can spy the dragon close by, guarding her." Then he went to the king and asked for a ship for himself and his brothers, and they sailed together over the sea till they came to the right place. There they found the princess sitting, as the stargazer had said, on the rock, and the dragon was lying asleep, with his head upon her lap. "I dare not shoot at him," said the huntsman, "for I should hail the beautiful young lady also." "Then I will try my skill," said the thief, and went and stole her away from under the dragon, so quietly and gently that the beast did not know it, but went on snoring. Then away they hastened with her, full of joy, in their boat towards the ship. But soon came the dragon, roaring behind them through the air, for he awoke and missed the princess. And when he got over the boat and wanted to pounce upon them and carry off the princess, the huntsman took up his bow and shot him straight through the heart, so that he fell down dead. They were still not safe, for he was such a great beast that in his fall he overset the boat. and they had to swim in the open sea upon a few planks. So the tailor took his needle, and with a few large stitches put some of the planks together. And he sat down upon these, and sailed about, and gathered up all the pieces of the boat, and then tacked them together so quickly that the boat was soon ready. And they then reached the ship and got home safe. When they had brought home the princess to her father, there was great rejoicing. And he said to the 4 brothers, "One of you shall marry her, but you must settle amongst yourselves which it is to be." Then there arose a quarrel between them. And the stargazer said, "If I had not found the princess out, all your skill would have been of no use. Therefore, she ought to be mine." "Your seeing her would have been of no use," said the thief, "if I had not taken her away from the dragon. Therefore, she ought to be mine." "No, she is mine," said the huntsman. "For if I had not killed the dragon, he would, after all, have torn you and the princess into pieces. And if I had not sewed the boat together again," said the gentleman, "you would have all drowned. Therefore she is mine." Then the king put in a word and said, "Each of you is right. And as all cannot have the young lady, the best way is for neither of you to have her. For the truth is, there is somebody she likes a great deal better. But to make up for your loss, I will give each of you, as a reward for his skill, half a kingdom." So the brothers agreed that the plan would be much better than either quarreling or marrying a lady who had no mind to have them. And the king then gave to each other half a kingdom, as he had said. And they lived very happily the rest of their days, and took good care of their father. And somebody took better care of the young lady than to let either the dragon or one of the craftsmen have her again. End of the 4 Clever Brothers. Lily and the Lion. A merchant who had 3 daughters was once setting out upon a journey. But before he went, he asked each daughter what gift he should bring back for her. The eldest wished for pearls, the second for jewels, but the third, who was called Lily, said, "Bring me a rose." Now it was no easy task to find a rose, for it was the middle of winter. Yet, as she was his prettiest daughter, and was very fond of flowers, her father said he would try what he could do. So he kissed all 3 and bid them good bye. And when the time came for him to go home, he had bought pearls and jewels for the 2 eldest, but he had sought everything in vain for the rose. And when he went into any garden and asked for such a thing, the people laughed at him and asked him whether he thought roses grew in snow. This grieved him very much, for Lily was his dearest child. And as he was journeying home, thinking what he should bring her, he came to a fine castle, and around the castle was a garden, in one half of which it seemed to be summertime, and in the other half, winter. On one side, the finest flowers were in full bloom, and on the other, everything looked dreary and buried in the snow. "A lucky hit," said he, as he called to his servant, and told him to go to a beautiful bed of roses that was there, and bring him one of the finest flowers. This dawn, they were riding away well pleased, when up sprang a fierce lion and roared out, "Whoever has stolen my roses shall be eaten up alive." Then the man said, "I knew not that the garden belonged to you. Can nothing save my life?" "No," said the lion, "nothing, unless you undertake to give me whatever meets you on your return home. If you agree to this, I will give you your life, and the rose too, for your daughter, So." But the man was unwilling to do so, and said, "It may be my youngest daughter, who loves me most, and always runs to meet me when I go home." Then the servant was greatly frightened, and said, "It may perhaps be only a cat or a dog." And at last the man yielded with a heavy heart, and took the rose, and said he would give the lion whatever should meet him first on his return. And as he came home, it was Lily, his youngest and dearest daughter, that met him. She came running and kissed him and welcomed him home. And when she saw that he had brought her the rose, she was still more glad. But her father began to be very sorrowful and to weep, saying, "Alas, my dearest child, I have bought this flower at a high price, for I have said I would give you to a wild lion, and when he has you, he will tear you in pieces and eat you." Then he told her all that had happened, and said that she should not go, let what would happen. But she comforted him and said, "Dear father, the word you have given must be kept. I will go to the lion and soothe him. Perhaps he will let me come home safe again." The next morning, she asked the way she was to go, and took her leave of her father, and went forth with a bold heart into the wood. But the lion was an enchanted prince. By day, he and all his court were lions, but in the evening they took their right forms again. And when Lily came to the castle, he welcomed her so courteously that she agreed to marry him. The wedding feast was held, and they lived happily together a long time. The prince was only to be seen as soon as evening came, and then he held his court. But every morning he left his bride and went away by himself, she knew not whither, till the night came again. After some time he said to her, "Tomorrow there will be a great feast in your father's house, for your eldest sister is to be married. And if you wish to go and visit her, my lions shall lead you thither." Then she rejoiced much at the thoughts of seeing her father once more, and set out with the lions. And everyone was overjoyed to see her, for they had thought her dead long since. But she told them how happy she was, and stayed till the feast was over, then went back to the wood. Her second sister was soon after married, and when Lily was asked to go to the wedding, she said to the prince, "I will not go alone this time. You must go with me." But he would not, and said that it would be a very hazardous thing, for if the least ray of the torch, light, should fall upon him, his enchantment would become still worse, for he should be changed into a dove, and be forced to wander about the world for 7 long years. However, she gave him no rest, and said she would take care no light should fall upon him. So at last they set out together, and took with them their little child. And she chose a large hall with thick walls for him to sit in while the wedding torches were lighted. But, unluckily, no one saw that there was a crack in the door. Then the wedding was held with great pomp, but as the train came from the church and passed with the torches before the hall, a very small ray of light fell upon the prince. In a moment he disappeared, and when his wife came in and looked for him, she found only a white dove, and it said to her, "7 years must I fly up and down over the face of the earth, but every now and then I will let fall a white feather that will show you the way I am going. Follow it, and at last you may overtake and set me free." This said, he flew out the door, and poor Lily followed, and every now and then a white feather fell, and showed her the way she was to journey. Thus she went roving on through the wide world, and looked neither to the right hand nor to the left, nor took any rest for 7 years. Then she began to be glad, and thought to herself that the time was fast coming when all her troubles should end, yet repose was still far off. For one day, as she was traveling on, she missed the white feather, and when she lifted up her eyes, she could nowhere see the dove. "Now," thought she to herself, "no aid of man can be of use to me." So she went to the sun and said, "Thou shinest everywhere, on the hill's top and the valley's depth. Hast thou anywhere seen my white dove?" "No," said the sun, "I have not seen it, but I will give thee a casket. Open it when thy hour of need comes." So she thanked the sun, and went on her way till eventide. And when the moon arose, she cried unto it, and said, "Thou shinest through the night, over field and grove. Hast thou nowhere seen my white dove?" "No," said the moon, I cannot help thee, but I will give thee an egg. Break it when need comes." Then she thanked the moon and went on till the night. Wind blew, and she raised up her voice to it, and said, "Thou blowest through every tree and under every leaf. Hast thou not seen my white dove?" "No," said the night. Wind, "but I will ask 3 other winds. Perhaps they have seen it." Then the east wind and the west wind came, and said they too had not seen it. But the south wind said, "I have seen the white dove. He has fled to the Red Sea, and is changed once more into a lion. For the 7 years are passed away, and there he is fighting with a dragon. And the dragon is an enchanted princess who seeks to separate him from you." Then the night wind said, "I will give thee counsel. Go to the Red Sea. On the right shore stand many rods, count them. And when thou comest to the 11th, break it off, and smite the dragon with it. And so the lion will have the victory, and both of them will appear to you in their own forms. Then look round, and thou wilt see a griffin, winged like a bird, sitting by the Red Sea. Jump on to his back with thy beloved one as quickly as possible, and he will carry you over the waters to your home. I will also give thee this nut," continued the night wind. "When you are half way over, throw it down, and out of the waters will immediately spring up a high nut tree on which the griffin will be able to rest. Otherwise, he would not have the strength to bear you the whole way. If, therefore, thou dost forget to throw down the nut, he will let you both fall into the sea." So our poor wanderer went forth and found all as the night wind had said. And she plucked the 11th rod and smote the dragon. And the lion forthwith became a prince, and the dragon a princess again. But no sooner was the princess released from the spell than she seized the prince by the arm and sprang on to the griffin's back, and went off, carrying the prince away with her. Thus, the unhappy traveler was again forsaken and forlorn. But she took heart and said, "As far as the wind blows, and as long as the rooster crows, I will journey on till I find him once again." She went on for a long, long way, till at length she came to the castle where the princess had carried the prince. And there was a feast got ready, and she heard that the wedding was about to be held. And, "Heaven aid me now," said she. And she took the casket that the sun had given her, and found that within it lay a dress as dazzling as the sun itself. So she put it on and went into the palace, and all the people gazed upon her, and the dress pleased the bride so much that she asked whether it was to be sold. "Not for gold or silver," said she, but for flesh and blood." The princess asked what she meant, and she said, "Let me speak with the bridegroom this night in his chamber, and I will give thee the dress." At last the princess agreed, but she told her chamberlain to give the prince a sleeping draught, that he might not hear or see her. When evening came and the prince had fallen asleep, she was led into his chamber, and she sat herself down at his feet and said, "I have followed thee 7 years. I have been to the sun, the moon, and the night, wind to seek thee. And at last I have helped thee to overcome the dragon. Wilt thou then forget me quite?" But the prince all the time slept so soundly that her voice only passed over him, and seemed like the whistling of the wind among the fir trees. Then poor Lily was led away, and forced to give up the good dress, and when she saw that there was no help for her, she went out into the meadow, and sat herself down, and wept. But as she sat, she bethought herself of the egg that the moon had given her, and when she broke it, there ran out a hen and 12 chickens of pure gold that played about, and then nestled under the old one's wings, so as to form the most beautiful sight in the world. And she rose up and drove them before her, till the bride saw them from her window, and was so pleased that she came forth and asked her if she would sell the brood, not for gold or silver, but for flesh and blood. Let me again this evening speak with the bridegroom in his chamber, and I will give thee the whole brood." Then the princess thought to betray her as before, and agreed to what she asked. But when the prince went to his chamber, he asked the chamberlain why the wind had whistled so in the night. And the chamberlain told him all, how he had given him a sleeping draught, and how a poor maiden had come and spoken to him in his chamber, and was to come again that night. Then the prince took care to throw away the sleeping draught. And when Lily came and began again to tell him what woes had befallen her, and how faithful and true to him she had been, he knew his beloved wife's voice, and sprang up, and said, "You have awakened me as from a dream, for the strange princess had thrown a spell around me, so that I had altogether forgotten you. But heaven hath sent you to me in a lucky hour." And they stole away out of the palace by night, unawares, and seated themselves on the griffin, who flew back with them over the Red Sea. When they were half way across, Lily let the night pass, fall into the water, and immediately a large nut tree arose from the sea, whereon the griffin rested for a while, and then carried them safely home. There they found their child, now grown up to be comely and fair. And after all their troubles, they lived happily together to the end of their days. The Fox and the Horse. A farmer had a horse that had been an excellent, faithful servant to him. But he was now grown too old to work, so the farmer would give him nothing more to eat, and said, "I want you no longer, so take yourself off out of my stable. I shall not take you back again until you are stronger than a lion." Then he opened the door and turned him adrift. The poor horse was very melancholic, and wandered up and down in the wood, seeking some little shelter from the cold wind and rain. Presently, a fox met him. "What's the matter, my friend?" asked he. "Why do you hang down your head and look so lonely and woe begone?" "Ah," replied the horse, "justice and avarice never dwell in one house. My master has forgotten all that I have done for him so many years, and because I can no longer work, he has turned me adrift, and says, unless I can become stronger than a lion, he will not take me back again. What chance can I have of that? He knows I have none, or he would not talk so." However, the fox bid him be of good cheer, and said, "I will help you. Lie down there, stretch your legs out quite stiff, and pretend to be dead." The horse did as he was told, and the fox went straight to the lion who lived in a cave close by, and said to him, "A little way off lies a dead horse. Come with me, and you may make an excellent meal of his carcass." The lion was greatly pleased, and set off immediately. And when they came to the horse, the fox said, "You will not be able to eat him comfortably here. I'll tell you what, I will tie you fast to his tail, and then you can draw him to your den and eat him at your leisure." This advice pleased the lion, so he laid himself down quietly for the fox to make him fast to the horse. But the fox managed to tie his legs together, and bound all so hard and fast that with all his strength he could not set himself free. When the work was done, the fox clapped the horse on the shoulder and said, "Jip, Dubbin, Jip." Then up he sprang and moved off, dragging the lion behind him. The beast began to roar and bellow, till all the birds of the wood flew away for fright. But the horse let him sing on, and made his way quietly over the fields to his master's house. "Here he is, master," said he. "I have got the better of him." And when the farmer saw his old servant, his heart relented, and he said, "Thou shalt stay in thy stable, and be well taken care of." And so the poor old horse had plenty to eat, and lived till he died. End of The Fox and the Horse. The Blue Light was once upon a time a soldier who for many years had served the king faithfully, but when the war came to an end, could serve no longer because of the many wounds which he had received. The king said to him, "You may return to your home. I need you no longer, and you will not receive any more money, for he only receives wages who renders me service for them." Then the soldier did not know how to earn a living, went away greatly troubled, and walked the whole day, until in the evening he entered a forest. When darkness came on, he saw a light, which he went up to, and came to a house wherein lived a witch. "Do give me 1 night's lodging, and a little to eat and drink," said he to her, "or I shall starve." "Oh ho," she answered, "who gives anything to a runaway soldier? Yet will I be compassionate and take you in, if you will do what I wish." "What do you wish?" said the soldier. "That you should dig all around my garden for me, to-morrow." The soldier consented, and next day labored with all his strength, but could not finish it by the evening. "I see well enough," said the witch, "that you can do no more to-day. But I will keep you yet another night, in payment for which you must, to-morrow, chop a load of wood, and chop it small." The soldier spent the whole day in doing it, and in the evening the witch proposed that he should stay 1 night more. "Tomorrow you shall only do me a very trifling piece of work. Behind my house there is an old dry well, into which my light has fallen. It burns blue and never goes out, and you shall bring it up again." Next day the old woman took him to the well and let him down in a basket. He found the blue light, and made her a signal to draw him up again. She did draw him up, but when he came near the edge, she stretched down her hand and wanted to take the blue light away from him. "No," said he, perceiving her evil intention, "I will not give you the light until I am standing with both feet upon the ground." The witch fell into a passion, let him fall again into the well, and went away. The poor soldier fell without injury on the moist ground, and the blue light went on burning. But of what use was that to him? He saw very well that he could not escape death. He sat for a while, very sorrowfully. Then suddenly he felt in his pocket and found his tobacco pipe, which was still half full. "This shall be my last pleasure," thought he, pulled it out, lit it at the blue light, and began to smoke. When the smoke had circled about the cavern, suddenly a little black dwarf stood before him and said, "Lord, what are your commands?" "What my commands are," replied the soldier, quite astonished. "I must do everything you bid me," said the little man. "Good," said the soldier. "Then, in the first place, help me out of this well." The little man took him by the hand and led him through an underground passage. But he did not forget to take the blue light with him. On the way, the dwarf showed him the treasures which the witch had collected and hidden there, and the soldier took as much gold as he could carry. When he was above, he said to the little man, "Go and bind the old witch, and carry her before the judge." In a short time, she came by like the wind, riding on a wild tomcat, and screaming frightfully. Nor was it long before the little man reappeared. "It is all done," said he, "and the witch is already hanging on the gallows. What further commands has my lord?" inquired the dwarf. "At the moment, none," answered the soldier. "You can return home. Only be at hand immediately if I summon you. Nothing more is needed than that you should light your pipe at the blue light, and I will appear before you at once." Thereupon he vanished from his sight. The soldier returned to the town from which he came. He went to the best inn, ordered himself handsome clothes, and then bade the landlord furnish him a room as handsome as possible. When it was ready, and the soldier had taken possession of it, he summoned the little black mannequin and said, "I have served the king faithfully, but he has dismissed me and left me to hunger. And now I want to take my revenge." "What am I to do?" asked the little man. "Late at night, when the king's daughter is in bed, bring her here in her sleep. She shall do servant's work for me." The mannequin said, "That is an easy thing for me to do, but a very dangerous thing for you. For if it is discovered, you will fare ill." When 12 o'clock had struck, the door sprang open, and the mannequin carried in the princess. "Ah, are you there?" cried the soldier. "Get to work at once. Fetch the broom and sweep the chamber." When she had done this, he ordered her to come to his chair, and then he stretched out his feet and said, "Pull off my boots." Then he threw them in her face and made her pick them up again and clean and brighten them. She, however, did everything he bade her without opposition, silently, and with half-shut eyes. When the first rooster crowed, the mannequin carried her back to the royal palace and laid her in her bed. Next morning, when the princess arose, she went to her father and told him that she had had a very strange dream. "I was carried through the streets with the rapidity of lightning," said she, "and taken into a soldier's room. And I had to wait upon him like a servant, sweep his room, clean his boots, and do all kinds of menial work. It was only a dream, and yet I am just as tired as if I really had done everything." "The dream may have been true," said the king. "I will give you a piece of advice. Fill your pocket full of peas and make a small hole in the pocket, and then, if you are carried away again, they will fall out and leave a track in the streets." But unseen by the king, the mannequin was standing beside him when he said that, and heard all. At night, when the sleeping princess was again carried through the streets, some peas certainly did fall out of her pocket, but they made no track, for the crafty mannequin had just before scattered peas in every street there was. And again, the princess was compelled to do servant's work until cock-crow. Next morning, the king sent his people out to seek the track, but it was all in vain, for in every street, poor children were sitting picking up peas and saying, "It must have rained peas." Night. "We must think of something else," said the king. "Keep your shoes on when you go to bed, and before you come back from the place where you are taken, hide one of them there. I will soon contrive to find it." The black mannequin heard this plot, and at night, when the soldier again ordered him to bring the princess, revealed it to him, and told him that he knew of no expedient to counteract this stratagem, and if the shoe were found in the soldier's house, it would go badly with him. "Do what I bid you," replied the soldier. And again, this third night, the princess was obliged to work like a servant, but before she went away, she hid her shoe under the bed. Next morning, the king had the entire town searched for his daughter's shoe. It was found at the soldier's, and the soldier himself, who at the entreaty of the dwarf had gone outside the gate, was soon brought back and thrown into prison. In his flight, he had forgotten the most valuable things he had, the blue lights and the gold, and had only 1 ducat in his pocket. And now, loaded with chains, he was standing at the window of the dungeon when he chanced to see one of his comrades passing by. The soldier tapped at the pane of glass, and when this man came up, said to him, "Be so kind as to fetch me a small bundle I have left lying in the inn, and I will give you a ducat for doing it." His comrade ran thither and brought him what he wanted. As soon as the soldier was alone again, he lighted his pipe and summoned the black mannequin. "Have no fear," said the latter to his master. "Go wheresoever they take you, and let them do what they will. Only take the blue light with you." Next day, the soldier was tried, and though he had done nothing wicked, the judge condemned him to death. When he was led forth to die, he begged a last favor of the king. "What is it?" asked the king. "That I may smoke one more pipe on my way." "You may smoke 3, answered the king. "But do not imagine that I will spare your life." Then the soldier pulled out his pipe and lighted it at the blue light, and as soon as a few wreaths of smoke had ascended, the mannequin was there with a small cudgel in his hand, and said, "What does my lord command?" strike down to earth that false judge there, and his constable, and spare not the king, who has treated me so ill." Then the mannequin fell on them like lightning, darting this way and that way, and whosoever was so much as touched by his cudgel fell to earth, and did not venture to stir again. The king was terrified. He threw himself on the soldier's mercy, and merely to be allowed to live at all, gave him his kingdom for his own, and his daughter to wife. Chand of the Blue Light. The Raven. There once was a queen who had a little daughter, still too young to run alone. One day, the child was very troublesome, and the mother could not quiet it, do what she would. She grew impatient, and seeing the ravens flying round the castle, she opened the window and said, "I wish you were a raven, and would fly away. Then I should have a little peace." Scarcely were the words out of her mouth when the child in her arms was turned into a raven, and flew away from her through the open window. The bird took its flight to a dark wood, and remained there for a long time. And meanwhile, the parents could hear nothing of their child. Long after this, a man was making his way through the wood, when he heard a raven calling, and he followed the sound of the voice. As he drew near, the raven said, "I am by birth a king's daughter, but am now under the spell of some enchantment. You can, however, set me free." "What am I to do?" he asked. She replied, "Go farther into the wood until you come to a house wherein lives an old woman. She will offer you food and drink, but you must not take of either. If you do, you will fall into a deep sleep and will not be able to help me. In the garden behind the house is a large tan heap, and on that you must stand and watch for me. I shall drive there in my carriage at 2:00 in the afternoon for 3 successive days. The first day it will be drawn by 4 white, the second by 4 chestnut, and the last by 4 black horses. And if you fail to keep awake, and I find you sleeping, I shall not be set free." The man promised to do all that she wished, but the raven said, "Alas, I know even now that you will take something from the woman and be unable to save me." The man assured her again that he would on no account touch a thing to eat or drink. When he came to the house and went inside, the old woman met him and said, "Poor man, how tired you are. Come in and rest, and let me give you something to eat and drink." "No," answered the man, "I will neither eat nor drink." But she would not leave him alone, and urged him, saying, "If you will not eat anything, at least you might take a draught of wine. 1 drink counts for nothing." And at last he allowed himself to be persuaded, and drank. As it drew towards the appointed hour, he went outside into the garden and mounted the tan heap to await the raven. Suddenly, a feeling of fatigue came over him, and unable to resist it, he lay down for a little while, fully determined, however, to keep awake. But in another minute, his eyes closed of their own accord, and he fell into such a deep sleep that all the noises in the world would not have awakened him. At 2:00, the raven came driving along, drawn by her 4 white horses. But even before she reached the spot, she said to herself, sighing, "I know he has fallen asleep." When she entered the garden, there she found him as she had feared, lying on the tan heap, fast asleep. She got out of her carriage and went to him. She called him and shook him, but it was all in vain. He still continued sleeping. The next day, at noon, the old woman came to him again, with food and drink, which he had first refused. At last, overcome by her persistent entreaties that he would take something, he lifted the glass and drank again. Towards 2:00, he went into the garden and on to the tan heap to watch for the raven. He had not been there long before he began to feel so tired that his limbs seemed hardly able to support him, and he could not stand upright any longer. So again he lay down and fell fast asleep. As the raven drove along her 4 chestnut horses, she said sorrowfully to herself, "I know he has fallen asleep." She went, as before, to look for him, but he slept, and it was impossible to awaken him. The following day, the old woman said to him, "What is this? You are not eating or drinking anything. Do you want to kill yourself?" He answered, "I may not, and will not either eat or drink." But she put down the dish of food and the glass of wine in front of him, and when he smelt the wine, he was unable to resist the temptation, and took a deep draught. When the hour came round again, he went, as usual, on to the tan heap in the garden to await the king's daughter. But he felt even more overcome with weariness than on the 2 previous days, and throwing himself down, he slept like a log. At 2:00, the raven could be seen approaching, and this time her coachman and everything about her, as well as her horses, were black. She was sadder than ever as she drove along, and said mournfully, "I know he has fallen asleep, and will not be able to set me free." She found him sleeping heavily, and all her efforts to awaken him were of no avail. Then she placed beside him a loaf and some meat, and a flask of wine, of such a kind that, however much he took of them, they would never grow less. After that, she drew a gold ring on which her name was engraved off her finger and put it upon one of his. Finally, she laid a letter near him, in which, after giving him particulars of the food and drink she had left for him, she finished with the following words: "I see that as long as you remain here, you will never be able to set me free. If, however, you still wish to do so, come to the golden castle of Stromberg. This is well within your power to accomplish." She then returned to her carriage and drove to the golden castle of Stromberg. When the man awoke and found that he had been sleeping, he was grieved at heart and said, "She has no doubt been here and driven away again, and it is now too late for me to save her." Then his eyes fell on the things which were lying beside him. He read the letter and knew from it all that had happened. He rose up without delay, eager to start on his way and to reach the castle of Stromberg. But he had no idea in which direction he ought to go. He traveled about a long time in search of it, and came at last to a dark forest, through which she went on walking for 14 days, and still could not find a way out. Once more the night came on. When worn out, he lay down under a bush and fell asleep. Again the next day, he pursued his way through the forest, and that evening, thinking to rest again, he laid down as before, but he heard such a howling and wailing that he felt it impossible to sleep. He waited till it was darker, and people had begun to light up their houses, and then, seeing a little glimmer ahead of him, he went towards it. He found that the light came from a house which looked smaller than it really was, from the contrast of its height with that of an immense giant who stood in front of it. He thought to himself, "If the giant sees me going in, my life will not be worth much." However, after a while he summoned up courage and went forward. When the giant saw him, he called out, "It is lucky that you have come, for I have not had anything to eat for a long time. I can have you now for my supper." "I would rather you let that alone," said the man, "for I do not willingly give myself up to be eaten. If you are wanting food, I have enough to satisfy your hunger." "If that is so," replied the giant, "I will leave you in peace. I only thought of eating you because I had nothing else." So they went indoors together and sat down, and the man brought out the bread, meat, and wine, which, although he had eaten and drunk of them, were still unconsumed. The giant was pleased with the good cheer, and ate and drank to his heart's content. When he had finished his supper, the man asked him if he could direct him to the castle of Stromberg. The giant said, "I will look on my map. On it are marked all the towns, villages, and houses. So he fetched his map and looked for the castle, but could not find it. "Ah, never mind," he said. "I have larger maps upstairs in the car. We will look on those." But they searched in vain, for the castle was not marked even on these. The man now thought he should like to continue his journey. But the giant begged him to remain for a day or two longer, until the return of his brother, who was away in search of provisions. When the brother came home, they asked him about the castle of Stromberg, and he told them that he would look on his own maps as soon as he had eaten and appeased his hunger. Accordingly, when he had finished his supper, they all went up together to his room and looked through his maps, but the castle was not to be found. Then he fetched other older maps. Then they went on looking for the castle, until at last they found it. But it was many thousand miles away. "How shall I be able to get there?" asked the man. "I have 2 hours to spare," said the giant, "and I will carry you into the neighborhood of the castle. I must then return to look after the child who is in our care." The giant thereupon carried the man to within about 100 leagues of the castle, where he left him, saying, "You will be able to walk the remainder of the way yourself." The man journeyed on, day and night, till he reached the golden castle of Stromberg. He found it situated, however, on a glass mountain, and looking up from the foot, he saw the enchanted maiden drive round her castle and then go inside. He was overjoyed to see her and longed to get to the top of the mountain. But the sides were so slippery that every time he attempted to climb, he fell back again. When he saw that it was impossible to reach her, he was greatly grieved, and said to himself, "I will remain here and wait for her." So he built himself a little hut, and there he sat and watched for a whole year. And every day he saw the king's daughter driving round her castle, but still was unable to get nearer to her. Looking out from his hut one day, he saw 3 robbers fighting, and he called out to them, "God be with you." They stopped when they heard the call, but looking round and seeing nobody, they went on again with their fighting, which now became more furious. "God be with you," he cried again, and again they paused and looked about, but seeing no one, went back to their fighting. A third time he called out, "God be with you," and then, thinking he should like to know the cause of dispute between the 3 men, he went out and asked them why they were fighting so angrily with one another. One of them said that he had found a stick, and that he had but to strike it against any door through which he wished to pass, and it immediately flew open. Another told them that he had found a cloak which rendered its wearer invisible, and the third had caught a horse which would carry a rider over any obstacle, and even up the glass mountain. They had been unable to decide whether they would keep together and have the things in common, or whether they would separate. On hearing this, the man said, "I will give you something in exchange for those 3 things. Not money, for that I have not got, but something that is of far more value. I must first, however, prove whether all you have told me about your 3 things is true." The robbers, therefore, made him get on the horse and handed him the stick and the cloak. And when he had put this round him, he was no longer visible. Then he fell upon them with the stick and beat them one after another, crying, "There, you idle vagabonds, you have got what you deserve. Are you satisfied now?" After this, he rode up the glass mountain. When he reached the gate of the castle, he found it closed, but he gave it a blow with his stick, and it flew wide open at once, and he passed through. He mounted the steps and entered the room where the maiden was sitting, with a golden goblet full of wine in front of her. She could not see him, for he still wore his cloak. He took the ring which she had given him off his finger and threw it into the goblet, so that it rang as it touched the bottom. And if that is so, the man must also be here, who is coming to set me free. She sought for him about the castle, but could find him nowhere. Meanwhile, he had gone outside again, and mounted his horse, and thrown off the cloak. When therefore she came to the castle gate, she saw him, and cried aloud for joy. Then he dismounted, and took her in his arms, and she kissed him, and said, "Now you have indeed set me free, and to-morrow we will celebrate our marriage." End of The Raven. When the last lantern flickered out, the path of stories had ended in soft silence. The night leaned close, gentle and calm, holding each dreamer in its quiet arms. In their hearts glowed the lantern's gifts: courage of a fox, laughter of a brook, hope of a star, song of a bird, and peace of a tree. The storyteller left a final spark in the air. Though the lanterns fade, their light stays with you. Carry it into tomorrow. The listeners drifted into dreams, like travelers reaching a safe shore, and above, the stars lingered, patient and watchful, until dawn's first light returned.